of excitement be? You know, maybe it's a 10 out of 10, maybe it's a 0. If Salt Lake City, Utah was somehow able to get themselves an expansion Major League Baseball team. They've went through all the proper procedures. They have everything set. It's the Larry Miller family. We're going to talk about that later this hour, and you guys can text us right now. Just if Major League Baseball moves 5 hours in a drive in a car from Boise, would you go to a game or two every summer? Be a pretty cool thing. Let us know. That might be in play. Mike Prater, you spent a lot of time, still do, in Salt Lake City, Utah. Major League Baseball, would it work there?
Oh, well, I thought you were going to ask me would I go. Of course I would go. I think we'd all road trip to that. Would it work? We'll debate that at 5:15. I'm still working on that. By the way, it doesn't have to be an expansion team. The A's and Tampa Bay are both looking for homes.
Good point. Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, that's certainly, baseball certainly wants to expand to 32 teams, and there's 4 or 5 cities on the roster, but there's also 2 teams that are very much desperately looking for home teams. So lots and lots of opportunities in play at this point.
Yeah, Salt Lake City A's. We'll talk about that this hour. But first, let's kick off another edition of our What's Next series, talking Boise State football and this offseason and the importance of this offseason, getting ready for potentially the toughest non-conference schedule in the history of the program. Prater, we're talking roster, we're talking transfer portal today for What's Next.
Struggled with this one, ball game, and I was somewhat joking in the top hour in the opening segment that this might be close to a perfect offseason football roster for Boise State. You know me, I'm the dark negative guy who likes to pick things apart. I'm skeptical, and I think everything sucks. I look at Boise State's football roster, and I'm not sure where I want to fix it. I mean, yeah, I'll snap my fingers and say they could use some help on the defensive line. We talked about that yesterday. There might be a second linebacker that I'd be more comfortable if there's somebody out there. Maybe a safety. I mean, everybody keeps telling us that Alexander Tubner is this hell of a football player. And when he was asked to be a football player and replace J.L. Skinner last year, he was really good. Can he be really good as the number one guy? I'm a little worried about Alexander Tubner. I thought I might have some issues with the punter, but I decided I did way too much research today on the punter. I should be fired by my boss for spending way too much time researching a punter today. But James Ferguson Reynolds, upon further review, had a really good year. I thought he was really consistent. I thought he was really good, and he is no longer a red flag for me. I don't have a lot of red flags in this roster, ball game. Let's talk about the red flags in the roster. Then we can dive into the transfer portal, because I think that's part of the conversation as well. But I'm not connecting a lot of dots right now.
Red flags on the roster for me will be how they sort out the defensive line. Who's going to start? Who's going to be key depth, how they're going to work a rotation. I think they are really going to miss Scott Matlock. Also, Jackson Cravens, I'll throw him in there too. He transferred to BYU. He would have been a surefire starter on this defense.
When he was healthy.
Yeah, which isn't every week. I get you. But, hey, Can he have a healthy year? We'll see what happens with him in BYU. So I have a lot of red flags there with the defensive line. I have a feeling that on opening day that they're going to get tossed around by a Washington offensive line and Michael Penix and not get pressure. And Penix is going to be sitting back there like a Heisman statue, putting up huge stats against this D. That worries me. And yeah, I'm with you on Tubner. I need to see Alexander Tubner become an all-league caliber guy week in, week out. We just saw him in spurts. And if he can have somewhere close to Skinner's season, that'd be tremendous. But there's always going to be just that massive gap in physicality between Tubner and J.L. Skinner. Now, maybe you don't have to worry about Tubner getting tossed for a game for targeting ever. J.L. had a couple of instances there. I have red flags there. And corner, I'm still not sure about. I know there's guys that they have. At least there's decisions to make. I think there's 4 players, including the McCoy kid now, who's played at the JC level, at a high-level JC, Laney College in LA. That's a big school. I'm sorry, in San Francisco area. That's a big school down there for JC in California. But I don't know if any of them are good. Markel Reed was pretty good in the year 2020, COVID year. Kaniho, not as good as his brother yet. I saw him get picked on multiple times last year just because, he's smaller than me, bless his heart, but he's a good cover kid. Jalen Clark, I don't know. McCoy, we'll see. So I have a few red flags on that defense, Prater. Offensively, though, I'm good to go.
How do you fix it? I mean, at this point, you can develop the roster. They're going to have player on player. They're going to have 7-on-7. They're going to go out there and do their things. They're going to hike Table Rock. They're going to have summer conditioning, blah, 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 blah.
Table Rock.
But how do you fix this roster if indeed that there are red flags? And that's kind of where we transition into the transfer portal. Do we think Boise State's going to lose any player? Of course, the answer is we wouldn't be surprised, but I don't identify a single person on this team that's going to transfer, certainly an impact player. And even with our issues at the defensive line, even with our issues with the second linebacker, even with your issues with cornerback or our issues at safety, I don't think I'm dipping into the transfer portal. I think I'm closing that door. I'm putting a padlock on that sucker. I'm shutting it down, and I'm not even taking a look at the transfer portal at this point.
You know the roster pretty well in terms of scholarships. Do you have an up-to-date or a close number right now about maybe how many scholarships they would have left?
I don't. They have some. They definitely have. Yeah.
They have maybe a small handful of schollies. So they could go to the portal if they want. They absolutely have schollies to give.
Absolutely. And even if you don't have schollies to give, you can figure that stuff out. If they felt like they needed to dive into the transfer portal and get somebody, they can make that happen. If you were Andy Avalos, where would you go? If I told you had to go into the transfer portal ballgame, where are you going first?
I want interior defensive line. That's where I would go first. Right up the middle. I'm going to build this thing from the inside out. Now, where am I going? Am I getting another Cortez Hogans from the MAC?
That's the problem.
Cortez Hogans is a sixth-year guy. They need to play him this year. He was playing in Northern Illinois a few years ago before going to junior college. I mean, is that where we're going? Possibly. And I don't know if that's going to fix any problems. Yeah.
No.
Alabama doesn't have a dude that's just waiting to come star for Boise State in the portal. They don't. So I'll give you that a little bit. But I'm playing your game. You're saying, hey, if you're going to go into the portal, you have one scholarship. And Andy's telling his staff this. They're sitting at their board meeting, and Andy says, okay, we're going to go into the portal for one player. Which assistant coach? Raise your hand if you want to be the coach that gets this guy. You're not going to see Matt Miller raise his hand. You're not seeing James Montgomery raise his, right? It might be Spencer Danielson at linebacker. It might be Chinander, the new D-line coach. Who knows, man? Maybe Chinander has some
Nebraska connections?
Yeah, some connections with Nebraska or UCF or whatever. That guy's got a pretty good resume. Maybe he could find somebody there. That's where I would go. Why? Where would you go?
I'd probably go linebacker. The defensive line thing scares me. I mean, it's hard to find an impact defensive lineman any time of year in the transfer portal, especially coming to Boise State. And now we're into April, and I'm afraid it's too thin. And I think it's just too much of a complicated position in terms of how you have to handle it. But now I'm going to switch to the linebacker and make myself sound stupid because I'd like them to maybe chase a linebacker, but the linebacker is kind of like quarterback of the defense. But DJ Schramm can take care of that.
Mm-hmm.
He can be the guy. I think I would go after an athletic linebacker. Just give me I can go into the transfer portal right now and find a linebacker body and a guy who has the mentality of just running around and hitting somebody. And you could probably get away with that at linebacker, even if he doesn't really fit the scheme or whatever. So I think depth-wise and maybe even starting-wise, I think I need a linebacker, and I think you could probably roll the dice and get yourself a linebacker in the transfer portal today, and he could come out and make a difference. But that's a little bit of a stretch.
Okay. They are so thin at linebacker, especially if the Misa kid is nowhere to be seen again this year. DJ Schramm and Andrew Simpson will be your starting linebackers. But after that, you look at the Misa kid, like I mentioned, Marco Notarani, Ty Tanner, he's a local kid. He's not probably going to play. Jake Ripp's not going to play. Wyatt Milikovich. I don't know, Prater. I don't know who the depth is. Gavin Hambrick. What are they going to do at linebacker if DJ Schramm and Andrew Simpson? I mean, they're just going to need to spell them at some point. Am I missing somebody?
No. Well, you are actually. I got a trivia question.
Misa?
For you.
I mean, who else is going to play linebacker on this team?
Did you know that there's a Vandal on this team?
Get out of here.
There is a Vandal on this team.
Get out of here.
You know he plays linebacker?
Is this a Prater trick question?
There's a linebacker. Vandal. 59.
Okay. Brett Tomasini
yes, sir.
from Eagle. Okay, he did transfer over from Idaho. Okay.
I need you to start pumping this dude up. Come on, Mr. Vandal.
You know what? Yeah, he'll probably be the best player on the team when it comes to special teams, and I think he's going to feel. No, I don't know anything about Brett Tomasini. Is he new to the roster?
I believe he played last year, 4 games. Yeah, he's new to the roster. He did the red shirt. Well, he redshirted 2 years ago, played the 4 games last year in Idaho, and then transferred down here and I'm mostly having some fun with you.
Yeah,
all due respect to Tomasini and the wonderful Tomasini family.
Yeah,
I don't think that they're counting on Brett Tomasini to be an impact player this year. But if he was, that'd be spectacular.
A couple of local guys on there too. Yeah, but yeah, there's no one behind those guys. So linebacker, okay, you could maybe sell me on. They just need to add depth, and that is a position they need to add depth with at linebacker. I mean, do you move somebody if they need to? I mean, think about this. I mentioned Jackson Cravens, who I think they'll miss, defensive tackle. But the other player playing at BYU,
Isaiah Banya.
They're
both going to start on the defensive line.
Now, how big do they miss Isaiah this year?
How come
he could have been a star here?
How come people aren't? I know Boise State fans. Boise State fans even turned on Chris Peterson when he took recruits to Washington.
I remember that. Yeah.
Kelly Papinga stole 2 starters off Boise State's defensive line.
And no one said a thing.
And no one said a word about that guy.
Does that bug you, Bronco Nation?
He took 2 starters.
Tell me. Yeah, 208-424-9300. Help us out with this roster management. Again, what's next? Our new series talking about Boise State offseason. Okay. Anything on, it's kind of weird. Like, you think Boise State hasn't been all that affected by the portal. This year was probably the worst. Those are 2 key pieces on that defense. Jackson Cravens, who would have started here, and Isaiah Banya might have been an all-league type of player.
Yeah, and I wouldn't say worse. I think Boise State handles the transfer portal perfectly. I mean, those 2 losses hurt.
But I was saying, typically it's not even that.
Exactly. They don't use it. They don't lose players to it. Typically, a couple here, a couple there.
Yeah.
Not there has been very few transfer portal guys that hurt when they left, and transfer portal guys coming. It seems like they pick and choose, and it kind of works out. So I think Andy Avalos has a really good perspective on the transfer portal, which tells me that he ain't touching it this offseason.
Okay, so that was my next question. Will Boise State sign a transfer portal kid between now and August? You say no.
I'm going to say, you know what? I'll throw one out there. Just one. Just a random one. I think it'll be one. And it'll be, okay, works for me.
I agree. I think they'll have one too. JT's on the line. Let's take some calls on this. JT, welcome to Idaho Sports Talk. What do you have for us, JT?
Hey, guys. Yeah, I disagree a little bit at linebacker. I actually think we're pretty loaded back there. Not a ton of playing experience, but they love a lot of those guys. Notarini is one that you're looking for.
Yep.
That was actually projected backup, and I think he got injured, and he's coming back, but they really like him. They've also mentioned in their interviews, they really like Jake Ripp, another young kid. You got Hambrick, you got Misa.
Yep.
And I don't have the roster in front of me, but there's a couple more. I think they're pretty high on them. I don't think they're going to be looking to bring a transfer linebacker. I could be wrong, but I think they're happy with their depth there. And then my next point is on the BYU transfers. Papinga did get some hate on the message boards I saw and on Twitter.
Good.
Briefly.
Good.
Right around the time all of that was going down. So I did see some of that. And, but it probably didn't linger all that long, but I definitely saw it. We noticed it.
Thanks, nice. I'm glad somebody noticed it. I'm not sure about, some of those names have been mentioned. My theory is always based on one thing. And I think you probably play the same game as I do, ball game. How many times is a name mentioned during 100 or during 30 days of spring camp? I think we did 32. I went back and counted because I had to do a research project the other day, but there were 32 interviews during spring camp. And they named names every single time.
And you listened to all 32 interviews and you tallied all the 9 times someone mentioned a name?
No. I went back and had to listen to all 32 for another reason, for something stupid. But they had 32 interviews and they mentioned names all the time. Notarini was maybe mentioned once or twice.
Rip.
Maybe once or twice. Misa, maybe a couple more times. Andrew Simpson is the one that kept mentioned all the time.
All the time. He's going to start.
Him and Schramm kind of play the same position, but they're both interchangeable.
Yep.
And they both and Schramm moved around last year. Schramm started at both spots last year, so they have some flexibility there. There's some serious potential in Misa they like. Milkovich, they didn't talk about much. Tanner, they didn't talk about much. And Tomasini and Hambrick, I never even heard those names mentioned. So,
yeah, I think they're thin at linebacker too. I know I respect JT's opinion on that. Maybe they do like them, but it's the land of the lost. It's the land of the unknown. Nobody knows if these guys can come in and play. And if Schramm or Simpson have something significant happen, then all of a sudden one of those guys we're talking about is going to get significant reps and snaps in big games. What if it's early in the season? When you're playing Washington, you're playing UCF, you're playing Memphis, you got San Diego State early on in the year as well. And this schedule's a murderer's row early on. I mean, hopefully they don't get in a situation where they're playing inexperienced guys and they're running around like their heads are cut off.
Yeah, I don't see that happening. They're too well coached. You know that. You love Spencer as much as I do, and Andy Avalos obviously is a linebacker, so he's gonna be keeping a little bit closer eye on that position, as he likes to hint every now and then. I suspect Rip or Misa or one of these other guys, somebody's going to crop up and merge. At the end of the season, Bob Beeler is going to be talking about a third linebacker who's had an impact season, and I just don't know who that is yet.
All right, Major League Baseball to Salt Lake City. Expansion team, or could it be the Salt Lake City Rays, the Salt Lake City A's? Salt Lake City wants a baseball team, and they're checking the boxes on this. They're putting the proposal together. How would it make you feel? 208-424-9300. You can call us. You can text us. That's what we're talking about when we come back on Prater and the Ballgame.
From the Beacon Plumbing Traffic Studios, this is Ticket